Nahual. This is a true story. I have the dash cam footage to prove it, though the police confiscated most of it. What they didn't take is what I'm about to show you. My name is Diego Ramirez. On March 15, 2019, at exactly 10:47 p.m., I picked up something that wasn't human on Highway 15D outside Tepic, Mexico. The burn scar on my hand. That's the least terrifying souvenir from that night. I need you to understand something before I continue. I've been driving pharmaceutical deliveries for 8 years. Night shifts, always alone, always the same route from Guadalajara to Tepic. I know every pothole, every curve, every shadow that crosses that highway. I know when the fog rolls in from the Sierra Madre Occidental, and I know the exact kilometer marker where cell service dies. What happened that night wasn't ignorance or imagination. I was completely sober, completely awake, and the dash cam recorded everything until it couldn't anymore. The night started wrong. My wife, Elena, had called at 9:15 just as I was loading the temperature-controlled containers into my van. Another fight about the extra shifts, about missing our daughter Sophia's school play, about the risks of driving alone at night through Nayarit. "Those mountains hide more than fog, Diego," she'd said, her voice crackling through the dying connection. "My grandmother told stories about that road, about the things that hunt there. I'd laughed it off, told her those were just old Huichol legends meant to scare children. The irony tastes like copper in my mouth now. By 10:30, I was deep into the mountain pass. The radio kept catching fragments of a weather alert between bursts of static. Dense fog warning for the highlands visibility near zero. But fog was normal here. The locals call this stretch Camino de los Susurros, the Whispering Road. When the wind cuts through the canyon walls at night, it does sound like voices, sometimes like crying, sometimes like laughter. That night it sounded like neither. The coffee incident happened at exactly 10:43. I remember because the digital clock on my dashcam footage shows it clearly. I'd bought the coffee at the last OXXO before the mountain road. Their machine was broken, so they'd given me yesterday's brew reheated. It tasted like burnt rubber and regret, but caffeine was caffeine. The cup sat in my console holder, steam fogging the passenger window. I reached for it while navigating a gentle curve muscle memory guiding my hand. But the van hit something, not a pothole exactly, more like the road itself had shifted. The coffee lurched, splashed over the lid, and scalding liquid poured across my right hand. The pain was immediate and blinding. My skin instantly blistered where the coffee made contact, a perfect splash pattern that I still carry. I yanked my hand back, accidentally hitting the radio. It screeched to life with a burst of static so loud it made my ears ring. Through the white noise, I caught fragments. "Tres hombres armados, extremely dangerous, avoid Highway 15D. Then nothing but that hollow mountain silence. My hand throbbed. I needed cold water, paper towels, anything. The nearest gas station was 45 kilometers ahead, according to my GPS, though the screen kept flickering between that and signal lost. No shoulders on this stretch wide enough to safely stop, just guardrails on one side and sheer rock face on the other. But then I saw it, a small pull-off ahead, barely visible in my headlights, more of a depression in the mountain wall than an actual turnout, but enough. I eased the van over tires, crunching on loose gravel. The headlights swept across the rock face, illuminating crude paintings that looked older than God. Petroglyphs, maybe, or just water stains. In the dash cam footage, they looked like warnings. The emergency water bottle was in the back with the medical supplies. Company policy: always be prepared for contamination or injury. I killed the engine but left the headlights on their beams, cutting maybe 10 feet into the wall of fog that had suddenly descended. The silence when I opened the door was absolute. No wind, no insects, not even the usual ticking of the cooling engine. Like the mountain was holding its breath. I walked to the back of the van, unlocked the cargo doors. The hinges shrieked in the silence. Inside, towers of white boxes marked with pharmaceutical labels, and there, the emergency kit. I grabbed the water, poured it over my burning hand. The relief was instant but incomplete. The blisters were already forming, angry and red. That's when I heard the footsteps on gravel. I turned, expecting maybe a local, another driver, even a cop. But my headlight showed two figures standing about 30 feet away, just at the edge of the light's reach. How they'd approached without me hearing until the last second, I still don't understand. The fog seemed to part around them, or maybe they were just that solid, that real, in all that gray nothing. A boy couldn't have been more than 12. Dirty white shirt that might have been a school uniform, once a brown wool vest that looked handmade. His eyes caught my headlights and threw them back like a cat's, that greenish gold reflection that animals get. But he was clearly a child, clearly human, clearly terrified. The man behind him was harder to see. He wore a traditional poncho, dark brown or black, hard to tell in that light. He stood hunched, whether from age or pain I couldn't determine. But the sound of his breathing carried in the silence, wet, labored, like drowning in reverse. "Señor, por favor," the boy called out. His voice was high but steady, older than his years. "Please, sir, my grandfather is hurt. We need help." Every instinct screamed no. 8 years of night driving had taught me the rules. Never stop for strangers. Never trust a child on a dark road. They're the favorite bait of highway robbers. Never ever let anyone into your vehicle in the middle of nowhere. But the boy stepped forward into the full glare of my headlights, and I saw his right hand. He had it wrapped in what looked like a torn piece of his shirt, yellow with age or something else. The fabric was soaked through with blood so wet it dripped steadily onto the gravel. Where his index and middle fingers should have been, the cloth sank inward hollow. Fresh wounds. Maybe an hour old, if that. "Jesus Christ," I whispered in English, forgetting myself. The boy understood anyway. He held up his mutilated hand like an explanation, an argument for compassion. Behind him, the old man made a sound that raised every hair on my neck. Not quite a moan, not quite a growl. Something between human pain and animal warning. "What happened to you?" I asked, switching back to Spanish, trying to keep my voice steady. "There was an accident," the boy said quickly. "Too quickly. Down in the ravine. Our truck flipped. My hand got caught when we climbed out. My grandfather, he hit his head. Please, we just need to get to the hospital in Tepic." I looked around. No skid marks, no broken guardrail, no sign of any accident. The boy followed my gaze. "Further back," he said. "We've been walking for an hour, maybe more. Time feels strange in the fog." That last part struck me as an odd thing for a child to say. But the blood was real. I could smell it now, metallic and fresh. The grandfather made another sound, and this time his knees buckled slightly. The boy rushed back to steady him, and for a moment the poncho shifted. I caught a glimpse of something dark, matting what might have been a beard, or might have been something else entirely. "Look," I said, hating myself for what I was about to say. "I can call for help. I have a radio in the van. The police and ambulance—" "No!" The boy's voice cracked with panic. "No police, please. We're undocumented. If they find us, they'll send us back. My grandfather will die if he goes back." It was a good story, believable, the kind that works on guilty consciences and bleeding hearts. But something in the boy's eyes when he said it, something in the way they reflected the light, made me think he wasn't lying about the danger, just about its nature. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. 15% battery, 1 bar of signal flickering in and out. A text from Elena. "Please be careful. Something feels wrong tonight." Then the signal died completely. The grandfather coughed or barked or made some sound that existed between those two things. When I looked back at him, his eyes were open beneath the poncho's hood. They caught the light just like the boys, but yellower, older, hungrier. I made my decision, the wrong one in retrospect, but maybe the only one that would have led to me surviving to tell this story. "Get in," I heard myself say. "I'll take you as far as Tepic." The boy's face transformed with relief, but there was something else there too, something that looked almost like pity. "Thank you, Señor, you're very kind." He helped his grandfather forward, their progress slow and painful, As they approached, my dash cam started acting strange. The recording light flickered the screen, going black for a second before returning. In that brief darkness, I thought I saw something else moving in the fog behind them, something on all fours. The boy opened the passenger door, the interior light illuminating his face fully for the first time. He was handsome in that way mountain children often are, all sharp angles and premature wisdom. But his teeth when he smiled seemed too sharp, too many. A trick of the light, I told myself. Everything's a trick of the light at night. "My name is Santiago," he said, climbing in with unnatural grace for someone with a mangled hand. "My grandfather doesn't speak anymore. Not since the accident." The old man was making his way to the rear passenger door. Each step seemed to take enormous effort, as if he was carrying something much heavier than his own body. When he finally reached the door, he stood there swaying slightly. Santiago had to get out and open it for him. The moment the grandfather climbed in, the van tilted. Not dramatically, but enough that I noticed. The shocks groaned. The man couldn't have weighed more than 150 pounds from what I could see, but the vehicle responded like I'd just loaded a half-ton of cargo. "Sorry," Santiago said, noting my expression. "He's heavier than he looks." The smell hit me then. Not body odor or blood, but something wilder. Like wet dog mixed with turned earth and old copper. It filled the van instantly, overwhelming even the antiseptic medical supply smell. I cracked my window, but the fog pushed back cold and thick as cotton. I started the engine. The radio sparked to life again, clearer this time. Military checkpoint established at kilometer 47. Armed robbery suspect still at large. Extreme caution advised. Santiago reached over and turned it off. His movement was too fast, too fluid. His mangled hand didn't seem to bother him at all. "The static hurts my grandfather's head," he explained. In the rearview mirror, I tried to see the old man's face. He'd positioned himself directly behind me, hunched forward so the poncho covered everything but his hands. They gripped the seat in front of him, and even in the dim light I could see the nails were thick, yellowed, curved like talons. The kind of nails that spoke of either extreme age or something else entirely. I put the van in drive, eased back onto the highway. The fog had gotten thicker, if that was possible. My headlights might as well have been candles. The dash cam kept fritzing, recording in stutters and jumps. Every time it cut out, I heard something from the back seat, breathing that was too deep, too resonant for human lungs. We'd gone maybe 2 kilometers when Santiago spoke again. "You're brave, Diego Ramirez?" I hadn't told him my name. We drove in silence for another 3 kilometers. The fog pressed against the windows like something alive seeking entry. Every time Santiago shifted in his seat, the dash cam would glitch. A frame of static, a second of blackness, then back to the hypnotic sweep of white mist in the headlights. During one of these blackouts, I heard it clearly, the sound of fabric tearing in the back seat. When the camera flickered back on, the grandfather's breathing had changed. Deeper. More rhythmic. Like something learning how to use lungs. "Your grandfather?" I said, trying to keep my voice conversational. "What happened to him exactly?" Santiago turned to look at me. In the green glow of the dashboard, his eyes weren't reflecting light anymore. They were producing it. A soft, phosphorescent gleam like deep-sea creatures. "He was bitten," the boy said simply. 3 days ago. The fever broke yesterday, but he hasn't been the same since." "Bitten by what?" "Does it matter?" The speedometer read 60 kilometers per h, but it felt like we weren't moving at all. The same fog, the same darkness, the same stretch of road repeating endlessly. My phone, now at 12%, showed no signal, and the GPS screen had gone completely black except for 2 words, "Location unknown." Santiago noticed me checking. "Technology doesn't work well here. Too much interference from the mountains." He paused. "Or from other things." The radio crackled to life without anyone touching it. Through the static came fragments of what sounded like an old recording, a woman singing a lullaby in Nahuatl, the ancient Aztec language. Santiago reached for the dial, but this time I grabbed his wrist. His skin was fever hot, and beneath it I felt things moving that weren't muscle or bone. "What are you?" I asked. He didn't pull away, just looked at me with those glowing eyes and said, "I'm what comes after, and my grandfather, he's what comes before." The thing in the back seat, I couldn't think of it as a man anymore, made a sound like grinding stones. The rearview mirror showed only darkness where it sat, a void in the shape of a person. But I could feel its attention heavy as lead blankets pressing against the back of my skull. "Pull over," Santiago said suddenly. "Now." "What know I?" "Pull over." His voice broke into harmonics no human throat could produce. The windows cracked, not shattered but spider-webbed with fractures that spread like living things. I yanked the wheel, right tires screaming as we skidded onto a narrow maintenance road I hadn't even seen until that moment. The van lurched to a stop. In the sudden silence I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. Then through the fog ahead lights appeared. Flashlights, 3 of them bobbing as their holders walked along the main road we'd just left. "Stay quiet," Santiago whispered. "Don't even breathe loud." The lights passed slowly. I caught glimpses of the men holding them. Military-style tactical vests, automatic weapons, faces hidden behind ski masks. These weren't police. These weren't military. These were the armed robbers from the radio warning. One of them stopped directly across from where we'd pulled off. He swept his flashlight in an arc, the beam passing inches from our hidden position. I held my breath until my lungs burned. The grandfather had gone completely still. No breathing, no movement, nothing. Like he'd become part of the van's interior. The robber took a step toward us, another. His flashlight beam touched the edge of our front bumper. That's when the transformation began. I felt it more than saw it at first. The temperature in the van plummeted so fast frost formed on the inside of the windows. The grandfather's breathing resumed, but it wasn't breathing anymore. It was the sound of bones breaking and reforming, of muscle tissue tearing and reknitting into new configurations. The smell intensified, wild animal musk mixed with something ancient and wrong. Santiago grabbed my shoulder, his fingers now ending in points sharp enough to pierce my jacket. "Don't look back," he hissed. "No matter what you hear, don't look back." But I could see it in the reflection of the windshield. The thing that had been an old man was unfolding. That's the only word that makes sense. Like origami in reverse, revealing layers that shouldn't exist in 3-dimensional space. Fur sprouted in waves, the poncho split. Something that might have been a muzzle, or might have been worse, pushed forward from what used to be a face. The robber outside had raised his rifle, was walking directly toward us now. He'd seen something. Maybe our breath fogging the windows, maybe the fresh tire tracks. It didn't matter. He was 10 feet away. 5. The back door exploded outward. What emerged moved too fast for my eyes to properly track. The dashcam footage just shows a blur of darkness, and then the robber is gone, not dead gone. Dragged into the fog so quickly his scream dopplered away like a passing train. His flashlight spun through the air, landed pointing at us, illuminating Santiago's face. The boy was smiling, not cruelly, but sadly. "He's so hungry," he said. "We tried to feed him before, but animals aren't enough anymore. They don't satisfy the need." Gunfire erupted from the main road. Muzzle flashes lit up the fog in strobe light bursts. Men screaming. The sound of something large moving through brush, circling them, playing with them. The grandfather, the Nahual, was hunting. "We should go," Santiago said calmly, as if we were discussing the weather. "He'll be distracted for a while." "I'm not going anywhere until—" A body hit the hood of the van. What was left of a body. The impact rocked the vehicle, and I found myself staring into the dead eyes of one of the robbers. His throat was gone, just gone, like it had been scooped out with surgical precision. "These men," Santiago said, pulling the corpse off the hood with disturbing ease, "killed a family 3 hours ago, parents and 2 children, for their car and 40,000 pesos. My grandfather heard them bragging about it on their radio frequency. That doesn't make this right. No, Santiago agreed. But it makes it necessary. The police won't catch them. The military won't find them. They'll disappear into the mountains and kill again, unless something stops them. Something that the mountains fear more than they fear men with guns. Another scream from the fog, wet and gurgling. The second robber. Your hand, I said, needing to focus on anything else. Let me see your hand. Santiago unwrapped the makeshift bandage. Where his fingers had been severed, new growth was already beginning, not healing, growing. Tiny digits pushing through the wounds like plant shoots, pale and unformed, but undeniably there. Every Nawal needs an heir, he explained. Someone of the bloodline. The transformation isn't just physical, it's a passing of responsibility. My grandfather fought it for 40 years, kept the hunger at bay with meditation, ritual, animal sacrifices. But 3 days ago, something happened. What? Me. I turned 12, the age of inheritance. His control slipped and something bit him. Not an animal. Him. He bit himself to activate the change he'd been suppressing because he knew what was coming. The robbers. Not just them. Something else is waking up in these mountains, something old and hungry and angry. The Nawal are guardians. We keep the balance, but there are so few of us left now. The third scream was different. Higher, more desperate. It went on for 30 seconds before cutting off abruptly. Then silence. Perfect, absolute silence. He's finished, Santiago said. Through the fog, a shape approached. It walked on 2 legs but wrong, joints bending in ways that hurt to perceive. 7 feet tall, covered in fur that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The eyes were the worst part. Still human, still aware, still horrified by what it was doing even as it couldn't stop. The Nawal, I couldn't deny what it was anymore, dragged something behind it. The third robber unconscious but breathing. It dropped him at Santiago's feet like a cat presenting a mouse. He's for you, the Nawal said, and its voice was like grinding millstones. You're first. To complete the binding, Santiago looked at the unconscious man, then at me. I'm not ready. You are 12. You have begun to change. You must feed the hunger or it will feed on you. I won't, not like this. The Nawal's attention turned to me. Those human eyes and that monster's face studied me with terrible intelligence. Then the witness. He has seen too much. No, Santiago stepped between us. He helped us. He showed kindness. Kindness is weakness. The guardian cannot be weak. Kindness is choice, Santiago shot back. And choice is what separates us from the things we guard against. They stared at each other, boy and monster, future and present. The tension was unbearable. My hand found the door handle, but I knew I'd never make it 3 steps if either of them decided I shouldn't. Finally, the Nawal stepped back. Its form began to contract, fold in on itself. Bones cracked and reset. Fur receded. In 60 seconds, an old man in a torn poncho stood where the monster had been. He was crying. "Forgive me," he whispered, and I wasn't sure who he was talking to. The hunger. It speaks so loudly now, I can barely hear my own thoughts over its screaming. Santiago embraced his grandfather. The old man sobbed into his shoulder, and for a moment they were just family. Broken curse, but family. "We need to go," Santiago said to me. "The police will come eventually. You can't be here." "What about the bodies?" "We'll handle them. We know the old ways. They won't come back." "Come back?" Santiago's laugh was bitter. "You think becoming a Nawal is the worst thing that can happen here? The dead don't always stay dead in these mountains, especially the ones who die violently. My grandfather isn't just feeding. He's preventing something worse." I looked at the 3 corpses scattered around us. In the dash cam footage, you can see something dark rising from them like steam dissipating into the fog. Whatever ritual the Nawal had performed, it had worked. "Get in the van," I said, surprising myself. "Both of you. I'll take you where you need to go." Santiago shook his head. "You've done enough, more than enough. But our path goes into the mountains now. Places your van can't follow, places humans shouldn't follow. Then what am I supposed to tell the police? The truth, that you found 3 dead robbers on the road, that it looks like an animal attack. They'll believe it because they want to believe it. The alternative is admitting that monsters are real. The old man approached me. Up close, he looked ancient, exhausted, used up. "Thank you," he said in accented English, "for showing my grandson that humans can still be good. He will need to remember that in the years to come." He pressed something into my hand. A small leather pouch on a cord. "Wear this always. It won't protect you from everything, but it will make certain things pass you by. Consider it payment for the ride." They walked into the fog. Just before they disappeared completely, Santiago turned back. "Diego," he called, "in 6 months you'll receive a package. Don't ignore it. It will be important." Then they were gone. Not gradually, one moment there, the next, vanished as if the fog had swallowed them whole. I stood there for 5 minutes, maybe 10, unable to move. Finally, the sound of sirens in the distance broke the spell. I got in the van, drove back to the main road. The police found me there, parked by the bodies, dash cam running. They took my statement. They confiscated most of the footage, but not all of it. The backup files on my phone's cloud storage, they missed those. 12 seconds of clear video showing the transformation, showing the truth. I've watched it 1,000 times, and each time I see something new, details that shouldn't exist. Angles that don't make sense. Proof that the world is stranger and more terrible than we want to believe. The leather pouch the old man gave me, I wear it still. And 3 times since that night, I've driven past things on Highway 15D that made my skin crawl. Shapes in the fog that weren't quite human. Sounds that weren't quite animal. Each time they've noticed me. Each time they've turned away as if repelled by something. Santiago was right about the package, too. But that's for later. First, you need to understand what happened when I tried to return to my normal life. When I thought the nightmare was over. It had only just begun. The drive back to Tepic should have taken 90 minutes. It took 3 hours. Time moved differently after they left, like the fog had infected reality itself. The dashcam timestamp would jump forward 10 minutes, then backward 5. The odometer added kilometers that the GPS insisted I hadn't traveled. At one point, I passed the same abandoned gas station 3 times, though I never turned around. When I finally reached the police checkpoint at kilometer 47, the officers looked at me like I'd crawled out of a grave. One of them, a young sergeant with nervous eyes, asked if I was all right. I caught my reflection in his sunglasses. Pale, hollow-eyed, looking decades older than when I'd started the drive. My hair black when I'd left Guadalajara now had streaks of white at the temples. The dashcam footage confirms this. In 3 hours, I'd aged years. "There are bodies," I told them. 3 men, armed robbers, I think, about 30 kilometers back near the maintenance road by marker 15. They found the corpses exactly where I said. The official report, which I obtained months later through a contact, described massive trauma consistent with large predator attack, possibly jaguar or mountain lion. But the forensic photographer, a woman named Carmen who quit 2 weeks after processing that scene, told me something different when I tracked her down. "The wounds were surgical," she said, nursing her 4th beer in a Guadalajara cantina. "Too precise for an animal. And the blood patterns were wrong. Animals are messy. This was deliberate, artistic almost, like something was showing off." She showed me photos the police hadn't included in the official file. The bodies had been arranged after death, positioned to form a symbol I recognized from the petroglyphs at the pull-off, ancient Nahuatl protection sigils. The Nahual hadn't just killed them, it had performed a ritual. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That night, after giving my statement after the paramedics checked my vitals and found my blood pressure dangerously elevated and my pupils non-responsive to normal stimuli, I drove home. Elena was waiting on the porch, despite it being 4 a.m. She took one look at me and started crying. "Your hair," she whispered. "Diego, your hair. I told her everything. She didn't believe me at first. Who would? But then I showed her the dashcam footage I'd saved. The 12 seconds of transformation. She watched it once, threw up, then watched it 6 more times. "We're leaving," she announced. "Tomorrow. My sister in Phoenix has room. We'll start over." Elena: "No. Whatever this is, we're not part of it. Sophia needs a father who comes home, not whatever you're becoming." I wanted to argue, but she was right. Something had changed in me during those hours on the road. I could smell things I shouldn't be able to smell. Elena's fear like bitter almonds. Sophia's dreams like vanilla and sunshine when I kissed her sleeping forehead. My reflection sometimes lagged a half-second behind my movements. And the hunger. Christ, the hunger. Not for food, for something else, for the hunt, for the chase. For the moment when prey realizes it's been caught. We lasted 2 weeks in Phoenix. The suburbs felt like a cage. The desert sun burned my now sensitive eyes. But worse were the voices. Every night at 3 a.m., the devil's hour Elena's grandmother called it, I'd hear Santiago calling my name. Not with my ears, deeper in my bones. "Diego, come back. The mountains are waking." Elena found me one night standing in Sophia's doorway watching her sleep. She says my eyes were reflecting the nightlight. She says I was making a sound in my throat like purring, but wrong. She says when she touched my shoulder, my skin was hot enough to leave blisters on her palm. I don't remember any of it. The next morning, I drove back to Mexico alone. Highway 15D looked different in daylight. Smaller, less threatening, almost mundane. But I knew better now. I could see the scratches on the rock faces where things with too many limbs climbed. I could smell the old blood soaked into the asphalt at certain curves. And at the pull-off where I'd first met Santiago, fresh petroglyphs had appeared, my name spelled out in symbols that hurt to perceive directly. I parked and waited. 6 hours, 7. The sun set, the fog rolled in. They came from the forest side, moving through the trees like smoke. Santiago looked older, not physically but in his bearing. His hand had fully regenerated, though the new fingers were slightly longer than the old ones, with nails that came to natural points. The grandfather was with him, but barely. His human form kept slipping fur, rippling beneath skin like water features, shifting between man and beast with each labored breath. "You came back," Santiago said, not surprised. "I'm changing," I replied. "Into something. I need to know what." The grandfather laughed a sound like breaking glass. "You looked too deep into the abyss and it looked back. But not just looked. It touched you. Marked you. You're becoming what we call a witness. A witness to what? The truth, capital T truth, the reality beneath reality. Most humans who see what you've seen go mad. Their minds break rather than bend. But you're adapting, evolving, becoming something that can perceive both worlds without losing itself in either. I don't want this. Want is irrelevant, Santiago said softly. The mountains choose their guardians. Nahual are born, but witnesses are made, forged in moments of impossible choice. You chose compassion over safety. You chose to help us despite your fear. That choice opened doors in your mind that can't be closed. My family will be protected as long as you serve your purpose. The grandfather's form solidified slightly, responding to some invisible effort of will. There are rules, ancient contracts. You've been drafted into a war you didn't know existed. He gestured to the forest. Through the trees I saw lights. Hundreds of them, eyes, I realized, watching, waiting. These mountains are a borderland, Santiago explained, between the world humans built and the older world that never left. Things sleep here that should never wake. Things hunt here that should never feed. The Nahual keep them in check, but we're dying out. Bloodlines ending, the hunger consuming us faster than we can train our heirs. So you need witnesses. We need bridges. Humans who can see both sides and speak for both sides, who can warn when the boundaries weaken, who can call for help when something breaks through. The grandfather stepped forward, and for a moment he was fully human. An old indigenous man with kind eyes and centuries of sorrow etched in his face. 6 months from now, he said, I will die. My body will fail to contain what I've become. Santiago will inherit fully. He'll need guidance, human perspective, someone to remind him why the hunt matters, why the hunger must be controlled. Will you be that person? I thought of Elena's tears, Sophia's laughter, the life I was losing. Then I thought of the 3 robbers and the family they'd murdered, the symbol they'd been arranged in, the thing that had risen from their bodies like smoke. What happened to the robbers' spirits? I asked. After they died, I saw something on the dash cam. Santiago and his grandfather exchanged glances. Show him, Santiago said. The grandfather sighed and pulled something from his poncho. A glass vial filled with what looked like black smoke. No, not smoke. Something that moved with purpose, throwing itself against the glass with silent screams. Their souls, the grandfather said simply, corrupted by violence, twisted by greed. If we'd left them, they would have become something worse than Nahual, something that feeds on suffering itself. This way they're contained, neutralized, until we can find a way to process them. Process. Purify. Destroy. Transform. We're not sure yet. The old rituals are incomplete. Too many wise ones died without passing on their knowledge. We're improvising. He handed me the vial. It was ice cold and burning hot simultaneously. The thing inside focused on me and I heard its thoughts. Rage, hunger, a desperate need to inflict pain. I handed it back quickly. There are dozens more like this, Santiago said, hidden in places humans don't go, growing stronger, growing hungrier, and something is calling to them. Something deep in the mountains that's been sleeping since before the Aztecs. It's waking up, and when it does... He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Teach me, I said. Whatever I need to know, teach me. The grandfather smiled sadly. The teaching has already begun. Every moment since you picked us up has been a lesson. Your burned hand, look at it. I looked down. The burn scar had changed. Instead of random splash patterns, it now formed a symbol. The same symbol from the petroglyphs. The same one the bodies had been arranged in. A ward, Santiago explained. Protection and imprisonment both. You can't fully transform. The mark prevents it. But you also can't fully return to ignorance. You're suspended between worlds. A permanent threshold guardian. That's why you were on the road that night. You were looking for someone like me. No, the grandfather said. We were hunting the robbers. Finding you was unexpected. Call it fate, call it luck, call it the mountains choosing their newest guardian. The why doesn't matter, only the what now. Something howled in the distance. Not a wolf, not exactly. The sound had too many layers, too many voices. The lights in the forest began moving, circling us. We should go, Santiago said urgently. They're getting bold, testing boundaries. What are they? The failed ones, Nahual who lost themselves to the hunger, witnesses who saw too much and shattered. Humans who sought power in the old ways but lacked the bloodline to control it. They hate us for what we represent. Control purpose, the thin line holding back chaos. And they're organized. They're becoming organized. Something's teaching them, guiding them. Another howl closer. Multiple voices now, a chorus of hunger and rage. Run, the grandfather said, and his form exploded outward into the full Nahual shape. 7 feet of muscle and fury and barely controlled hunger. Run now! Santiago grabbed my arm, his grip strong enough to leave bruises. We ran toward the van as the forest erupted behind us. The dashcam footage shows what I couldn't see in the moment. Dozens of shapes pouring from the trees. Some on 2 legs, some on 4, some on arrangements that didn't make anatomical sense. The grandfather met them head-on, a whirlwind of claws and teeth and primitive rage. We made it to the van. Santiago literally threw me into the driver's seat. Drive, don't stop. Don't look back. I drove. The speedometer hit 140 kilometers per h on roads not designed for half that. In the mirror's fire, the forest was burning. Green flames that gave no heat but consumed everything they touched. Through the smoke, massive shapes fought. Not just the grandfather now. Other Nawal had arrived. A war was happening behind us, and I was fleeing like a coward. "It's not cowardice," Santiago said, reading my face. "You're not ready for that level of truth. Your mind would break. Even I can't look directly at it without risking madness. Your grandfather will survive or won't. That's the way. Every guardian falls eventually. The question is whether they fall with purpose or just fall." We drove in silence until we reached Tepic. Santiago directed me to an old church on the outskirts, abandoned for decades. Inside, hidden beneath the altar, was a tunnel system. Pre-Columbian, he said. Older than the Spanish, older than the Aztecs, maybe older than humanity itself. "This is where you'll train," he said. "Every weekend. Tell your family you've taken a second job, security work. It's not entirely a lie." "What about my actual job?" "Quit. You won't need money anymore. The mountains provide for their guardians." He was right. The next day I found a bank account in my name with enough money to support my family for years. No traceable source, no tax implications, just numbers on a screen that never decreased no matter how much I withdrew. Elena didn't understand, but she accepted it. We moved back to Guadalajara. I told her I was working private security for wealthy families, irregular hours, but excellent pay. She suspected an affair at first. The strange smells on my clothes, the wounds I couldn't explain, the way I'd sometimes speak in languages I didn't know I knew. But eventually she realized the truth was stranger and more terrible than infidelity. The training with Santiago was brutal. Not physically, my body adapted quickly to whatever was demanded of it, but mentally, learning to see without seeing, to know without knowing, to hunt without becoming lost in the hunt, to feel the hunger without feeding it. "The hunger never goes away," Santiago told me during one session. "It only gets louder. The trick isn't to silence it, but to make it serve a purpose. Transform it into something useful." "Like what?" "Justice, protection, balance. The hunger doesn't care what it feeds on as long as it feeds. So we feed it purpose instead of flesh." 5 months into my training, the grandfather missed a session. Then another. When he finally appeared, he was more beast than man. His human form lasted minutes at most before collapsing back into the Nawal shape. And even that was unstable, constantly shifting as if his body couldn't remember what it was supposed to be. "It's time," he told Santiago. "The mountains are calling me home." The last ritual took place on the summer solstice, June 21st, 2019, the longest day of the year. We climbed deep into the Sierra Madre to a place where the rocks themselves seemed alive. Ancient carvings covered every surface, not just petroglyphs, but something older, pre-human maybe. Other Nawal were there, 7 of them from bloodlines across Mexico. They formed a circle around the grandfather, who stood naked in the center, his form cycling through shapes too quickly for the eye to follow. Man be something between something beyond. Santiago stood with him holding an obsidian knife that seemed to drink light. "This is the way," the grandfather said, his voice coming from multiple throats simultaneously. "The blood passes, the hunger transfers, the guardian falls so the guardian can rise." He knelt. Santiago raised the knife. "I won't describe what happened next. Can't. My mind won't let me." The dashcam I'd hidden in my backpack recorded it, but the footage is just white light and screaming static. When it cleared, the grandfather was gone, not dead, gone, erased, unmade. And Santiago had changed, still 12 years old in appearance, but ancient in his eyes. The new fingers on his right hand had turned black like obsidian. When he spoke, I heard the grandfather's voice layered beneath his own. "It's done," he said. "I am the guardian now, and you? You're my witness." 6 months passed. The package arrived on a Tuesday morning, December 15th, 2019. No return address, no postmark, just my name, written in Santiago's childish handwriting. Inside a flash drive, a worn leather journal, and a single black feather that disintegrated the moment I touched it, leaving ash patterns on my palm that spelled out GPS coordinates. The journal was the grandfather's. 40 years of observation, sketches of things that shouldn't exist, maps of tunnel systems beneath every major city in Mexico. The last entry, dated the day before he died, was addressed to me, Diego Ramirez, witness. By the time you read this, I will have returned to the mountain. My grandson will carry the burden I could no longer bear. But you carry something else. The burned hand that marked you was no accident. The coffee, the timing, the fog, all orchestrated. The mountains needed a human anchor for what's coming. Check the flash drive. Understand what we've been fighting. Prepare your family. The boundaries don't just weaken, sometimes they shatter, and when they do, witnesses become the last line of defense. The flash drive contained security footage from across Mexico. Gas stations, ATMs, traffic cameras, all showing the same thing, shadows moving independently of their sources. People disappearing in crowds only to reappear days later with no memory of lost time. Children's eyes reflecting light in impossible colors. And in 3 videos, clearer than the others, creatures walking openly through city streets while humans pass by unseeing. "The veil is failing," Elena said, looking over my shoulder. She'd stopped denying the truth months ago when she'd seen me pull shadow shapes from our daughter's nightmares and crush them into nothing. "That's what this means, isn't it?" I drove to the coordinates that night. An abandoned mine shaft in the mountain's colonial era from the look of it. Santiago was waiting at the entrance, but he wasn't alone. A girl stood beside him, maybe 14, with the same 2 bright eyes and sharp angled features, another Nahual bloodline. "This is Lucia," Santiago said. "The mountains chose her 3 nights ago. Her transformation was violent. She killed her entire family before I could reach her." Lucia stared at me with eyes full of guilt and hunger in equal measure. "They tried to stop me from leaving, from answering the call. I didn't mean to, but the hunger, it spoke so loud." "That's why you're here," Santiago told me. "To teach her what I learned from you. That choosing compassion is possible even when the hunger screams for violence." "I'm not a teacher. You're a witness. Teaching is part of witnessing, showing others what you've seen so they can learn without experiencing." He led us into the mine. The tunnels went deeper than any colonial mine should, eventually opening into a natural cavern system. The walls were covered in that same pre-human writing, but fresh, still wet, written in something that glowed faintly green. "My grandfather discovered this place 20 years ago," Santiago explained. "It's a prison, or was, for something the ancient Nahual captured but couldn't kill. At the cavern's heart was a pool of black water that reflected no light. The surface was perfectly still, but I could feel movement beneath, something massive, something waiting. It woke up 3 months ago," Lucia said, "the same night I transformed. I heard it calling in my dreams, promising power, promising freedom from the hunger." "It's lying," Santiago said firmly. "It doesn't free the hunger, it becomes the hunger. Pure appetite without purpose or control." I approached the pool despite every instinct screaming retreat. In its depths something opened, what might have been an eye. The moment our gazes met, I was elsewhere. A city of gold and shadow, streets filled with creatures that had once been human. And at its center, a pyramid of black glass where something with Santiago's face but ancient eyes sat on a throne of bones. "This is the future if we fail," the vision, Santiago said. "If the prison breaks, if the sleeping god wakes fully, every human becomes food, every Nahual becomes a general in its army. Every witness becomes a prophet of its hunger." The vision shattered. I was back in the cavern on my knees, blood streaming from my nose. Santiago and Lucia held me upright. "You saw it," Santiago said. "It wasn't a question. We have to stop it." We have to contain it. Killing it would break reality itself. It's too deeply rooted in the fundamental structure of this place. But the prison is weakening. The grandfather spent decades reinforcing it, but without him. You need more guardians. We need an army. But the bloodlines are almost extinct. The hunger consumes most Nawal before they can reproduce. And witnesses, most humans who see too much, simply break. That's when I understood my real purpose. Not to fight, not to guard, but to recruit. To find humans strong enough to see the truth without shattering. To build a network of witnesses who could support the few remaining Nawal. The dashcam footage, I said. We spread it, carefully. Find people who can watch it without dismissing it or going mad, Santiago smiled sadly. Already started. Why do you think certain videos go viral? Why do you think some people become obsessed with the paranormal we're selecting? Testing. Most fail. But a few... How many witnesses are there? Worldwide. Maybe 300. In Mexico, 17. You've met 2 of them without knowing. Your contacted the police. The forensic photographer who quit. Carmen. She'd seen the truth and walked away. I wondered if she'd been recruited or if she was still running from what she'd witnessed. Over the following weeks, I learned the full scope of the network. Witnesses in hospitals reporting unusual deaths. Witnesses in schools watching for children showing signs of transformation. Witnesses in governments suppressing or releasing information as needed. All of us marked in some way, burned scars, wounds that never quite healed right. All of us suspended between worlds, unable to fully return to ignorance, but unable to fully embrace the monstrous. Elena and Sophia adapted better than I'd expected. Elena started wearing the protection charms I brought home. Sophia, only 6, drew pictures of the shadow things she sometimes saw and learned to call for me when they got too close. We became a family that checked under beds not for imaginary monsters, but for real ones. Then came the night of January 3rd, 2020. I woke to Santiago's voice in my head, urgent and terrified. The prison is breaking. Come now, bring everyone. I arrived to find chaos. 7 Nahual in full form surrounded the pool, fighting something that had partially emerged. Tentacles of living shadow, each one ending in mouths that sang corruption in harmonics that hurt to hear. Lucia was down her left arm, gone below the elbow, regenerating too slowly. Santiago stood at the pool's edge, speaking in that ancient language, trying to reinforce bindings that were visibly unraveling. It fed on something, he gasped when he saw me. Someone performed a mass sacrifice. 30 people. Their souls went straight to it. Through our connection, I saw the truth. A cartel execution 200 miles away. But not random violence, ritual murder. Someone who knew about the prisoner. Someone who wanted it free. There's a cult, Santiago said. Humans who worship it. Who want the apocalypse it represents. We've been so focused on containing it, we didn't notice them organizing. The thing in the pool surged upward. For one terrible moment, I saw its true form. An absence rather than a presence, a hole in reality, shaped vaguely like a vast serpent. Where it touched the air, existence itself curdled. That's when Lucia did something impossible. Still missing an arm, she dove into the pool. No! Santiago screamed, but it was too late. The water erupted. Lucia emerged, but transformed beyond anything I'd seen. Not Nahual anymore, something new, something that shouldn't exist. She'd merged with part of the prisoner, become a hybrid of guardian and guarded. Her remaining hand had become a blade of crystallized darkness. Her eyes were voids that reflected nothing. She spoke in a voice like grinding galaxies. I understand now. The hunger isn't the enemy. The hunger is the solution. Feed it everything and it becomes nothing. Starve it of everything and it becomes everything. She turned that blade hand on herself, piercing her own heart. The prisoner shrieked, a sound that shattered every piece of glass within 5 miles. Then both Lucia and the emerged portion of the prisoner collapsed back into the pool. The water turned clear, then froze solid. Santiago fell to his knees. She sacrificed herself, became a living seal, but it won't hold forever. Maybe 10 years, maybe 20. Then we'll need another sacrifice. Another Nawal willing to become part of the prison itself. The other Nawal dispersed without words. The weight of what we'd witnessed, what would be required, again too heavy for language. I drove home in silence, but found Elena waiting with news that changed everything. "I'm pregnant," she said. "And Diego, I've been having dreams. Dreams where the baby speaks to me. It says the mountains chose it, that it will be born marked." I looked at her stomach, and with my witness sight I could see it. A tiny light pulsing with potential. Not Nahwal, not human, something new, something the mountains were creating in response to the growing threat. "What do we do?" Elena asked. "We prepare," I said. "We teach it. We make sure that when the time comes it has a choice, a real choice, not like Lucia, not like Santiago, a choice made from love, not hunger." The child was born on September 15th, 2020. A girl. We named her Esperanza, Hope. She opened her eyes and they reflected light like a cat's. On her right hand a birthmark in the exact shape of my burn scar. Santiago visited the next day. He looked at the baby and smiled. The first genuine smile I'd seen from him since his grandfather died. "The mountains are learning," he said, "adapting, creating new types of guardians for new types of threats." He touched Esperanza's hand gently. "She won't be Nawal, won't be witness. She'll be something we don't have a word for yet." "What if we fail?" I asked. "What if we can't protect her until she's ready? Then the world gets the apocalypse it's been unconsciously craving. But Diego?" He looked at me with those ancient child's eyes. "The fact that she exists at all means the mountains haven't given up on humanity. That's more hope than we've had in centuries. As I write this, it's December 2024. Esperanza is 4. She speaks to shadows like old friends. She draws pictures of the city of gold and shadow from my vision, though I've never told her about it. Last week, she looked at me and said, 'Daddy, the sleeping thing is having bad dreams. When it wakes up, will you help me sing it back to sleep?' Santiago is 17 now, but looks 30. The hunger is aging him rapidly. He estimates he has maybe 5 more years before he'll need to make Lucia's choice. The other Nawal bloodlines are failing one by one. The witnesses are spreading, but not fast enough. And somewhere the cult that fed the prisoner is planning their next move. The dash cam from that night on Highway 15D still records, though I've never put it in another vehicle. Sometimes it turns on by itself and shows things happening in places I've never been. Last night it showed Elena and Esperanza walking hand in hand through a forest of silver trees under a blood-red moon. They were both smiling. I don't know if it's prophecy or warning. I don't know if we're guardians or prisoners. I only know the hunger never stops. It only changes shape. And sometimes if you're very lucky or very cursed, you get to choose which mouth it speaks through. The mountains are still calling. They always will. And now, if you've read this far, if you haven't dismissed it as fiction, if something in these words resonates with that deep part of your mind that knows monsters are real, the mountains are calling you too. Check your hands for marks that weren't there yesterday. Listen for voices in radio static. Watch for shadows that move wrong. And if a child with 2 bright eyes ever asks you for a ride on a dark mountain road, remember this. The choice to help despite the danger is what makes us human. The choice to become something more, to stand between the darkness and the light, is what makes us guardians. Choose wisely. The hunger is always listening. End. Note found attached to the original document: Diego Ramirez disappeared on December 20th, 2024. His family reported him missing after he failed to return from what he described as routine witness work. His van was found at the pull-off on Highway 15D where this story began. The dash cam was still recording. It shows Diego walking into the fog with a small figure that might be a child, or might be something else. The footage cuts to static after 11:47 p.m., exactly 5 years after the events described here began. He has not been found.